I am so thrilled to be hosting Debra Atkinson today. Debra Atkinson is a pioneer in menopause fitness. She's a health and fitness expert, and she has helped more than 275,000 women flip their second half with energy and vitality. She's a best-selling author. The names of her books are amazing. You Still Got It, Girl, The After 50 Fitness Formula for Women, and Hot, Not Bothered. Debra hosts the Flipping 50 TV, which is an internet broadcast, and the Flipping 50 podcast. She is incredible. In fact, we're going to dive into how when we're over 50, we're kind of treated, especially in the medical world, as an old shoe that's cast away in the closet. Now you're old. Now you're on medications. Now you're going to be gaining weight. Now you're going to lose muscle mass. Now you're going to have osteoporosis. I personally don't believe that, and neither does Debra. And we are going to talk about how to make the second side, the flipping 50, the best years of your life for not only present moment, but also longevity, so that you can be doing what you want to be doing for the rest of your life. She is inspirational. She's also incredibly kind and sweet. I love this woman, and it is my pleasure to introduce Debra Atkinson. Hi, Debra.
Well, hello. How are you?
I am so happy that you're here. And I think part of the reason is you are so wise. There is so much wisdom that you hold. And I don't know if it's just from all these amazing personal experiences you have or the things that you've gone through, which I know we'll dive into. But every conversation I've ever heard of you, watched you, talked to you with, been in, is full of so much wisdom. So I'm really excited for everyone to hear you and talk to you. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here.
Well, thank you. How flattering. I might go out and come back in again. That was pretty cool.
You want to do it again? Well, I know that there's tons of stories that you have, but one of the things that I really want to unpack with you today is this idea that when we turn over 50, we're like an old shoe that should just be tossed in a closet, and we're going to get fat, and we're not going to be, our careers are on the downslide, and we're on our way out. We're going to be grandma with knitting our stuff. And you are a great example of how this is absolutely not true. And what you do personally in your life, plus how you help others, get their fitness and realize that we are actually powerhouses over 50. I'm close. I'm a year and a couple months out, and I am so excited for my 50s because I am going to accomplish so much more probably in that decade than I have in the last two. So can you speak to this idea? Because you have flipped the definition of 50. And I want to, how did this come about? Was this a personal thing for you, or what happened?
It was very personal. And then it was clunky. So Flipping 50 wasn't always the name. It wasn't always the tagline. And suddenly on a boat, I believe, I'm not on a boat frequently. I don't frequently have cocktails on a boat, but somehow that's how it happened. And it rolled out, and everybody's like, oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. It's like immediately I get it. And it either means to you many things, like I'm flipping 50, my birthday. It meant to a lot. To me, it meant I want to flip what 50 and or 60 or 70, what that second half means to all of us, how we think about it. Yeah. And of course, the vehicle we're using is not just mindset, but it's muscle and building strength in order to do it. And to your, mention of it means you're a grandma. And by the way, I am. And I know. I can tell it now. Like by the time this is out, I can tell it. I've been stifled up until now. And it's so exciting. So, people are like, do you like that word? And I'm like, I thought about it for 5 seconds, and then it's like, whatever term rolls out of that sweet child's mouth is going to be just fine. I have a feeling. I don't really care, So, but that's the whole point is I want to be a kick-ass grandma. I want to be a grandma on the floor, on the soccer ball, on the tee, and playing actively and doing it. And so it's just anything that you aspire to do. I think looking at that as your motivation for, 30 years from now, you're going to think you were pretty young and wonder, what the heck was I doing? Why'd I waste that time? So we need to get started right now.
Well, yeah, if I look back when I was 20, I didn't love my body at 20. But now that I'm like, oh, I wish I had the body I had when I was 20. I mean, we don't ever appreciate what we have in the moment. And I as well, I'm going to be a kick-ass grandma. I'm going to be riding Space Mountain at 90. Great grandma. I like, put me on a roller coaster. I don't want to have to read the thing on the wall that says, if you're old and you have, you can't ride this roller coaster. I am not interested in not riding the roller coaster, right? But I think it comes down to having a health vision. I think so many of us have visions for many things. We have visions for our career. We have visions for or ideas of what our relationships are going to be like. A lot of people work on manifesting a husband or a job, or they work for somebody else, or they create plans for company visions. But not a lot of people really take time, in my opinion, to really look at their health vision and where do they want to be. They're focusing so much on what they're in right now.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in pain, or I'm overweight, or I have autoimmune condition, or I have this or that, and all these labels. When what you said is really important, when you look back, advance 20 years, you're going to love your body right now and what you have. And so what do you want to be doing with your body? And it does so much come down to strength, the life that you want without excuses. And I personally, now I'm not 50 yet, so you're going to have to give me wisdom here. But there has been a massive change from 45 to my almost 49 now in the way that I look at the world and the way that I put up boundaries for myself, it's better. I get better and better. And I can only imagine that in the fees, there's even more clarity on really embracing authentically who you are. And then making that choice to do what you do, to take care of yourself, right?
Yeah. And, from where I am, so I will turn 61, in a week or so.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. And, turning 60 was, it wasn't a scary thing like, oh, I don't want to do this. It was actually, it's so much better because I look back and I thought, you take stock of the last decade, not just of your last year when you're at a zero. And I did so much between 50 and 60. I was very uncomfortable some of that time, which is what happens when you're going to do big things or you're going to learn big things. And it always happens that way. But there is this, as you go later and later, I think into your phase, at least my experience and from many of the women in our community, you begin to care less about what anybody else thinks. And that is like a load, like you just dropped weight. If you were carrying excess weight, you drop that baggage. And now at 60, it's much more like, those clothes in the back of the closet that I love. Why am I saving them for a special occasion? I'm wearing the party pants. I mean, it's like, I don't really care what anybody else thinks. I bought it. I like it. I love it. I'm wearing it, Yeah. So I think when we can, go through things, but it gives you an air of confidence that we're much more comfortable not having all the answers, being able to ask questions. And that goes for, I think, a lot of people in my environment community who are not exercising and realize, I'm not going to be good at it right away because we're rarely good at things. We're just starting. So we have to give ourselves that room to be a beginner, be a learner.
Yeah, we have to ditch the perfectionism.
Right.
On this show, we talk a lot about perfectionism. And I was raised that you need to do it perfectly. You need to make sure you show up. You need to be there. You need to be perfect all the time. And if you're not, don't show up, And I don't think I'm alone in that. Yeah. I think there's so much perfectionism and letting go of this expectation that is truly, Debra, it's unattainable. Right. You cannot obtain perfection because it's different to everybody. So it's not even a goal that's worth going towards. It doesn't make any sense to me now. Back then,
Right.
But you said that, especially in the last 10 years, you spent a lot of that time uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories here of a place where you were so uncomfortable, you were like, I don't know if I can keep moving forward, where that old self was pulling you back to your old patterns when you were trying to move forward. Do you have any specific examples there that you could share?
Yes, I've got some of those too, but I would say bigger, I couldn't go back. So I cut a cord at 49. So it's just a little outside of a decade here. But at 49, I cut a cord, and I had struggled with this decision for 2 years. I knew that I was kind of at the top of the ladder where I was. I was a big fish in a little pond. And I was very comfortable, and everybody knew me, and I was the local expert. And, I could have stayed there for a very long time. And I kept feeling or thinking there's more that I could be doing. I could see a problem, and I always default to the National Treasure. So in the movie National Treasure, he said, if you see a problem, you actually have the responsibility to do something about that. You acquired it, right? So I could sit back and point fingers and say, this is wrong, or I could say, okay, I'm going to be a part of the solution. So when I quit, in order to dedicate all of my time to this, that was like, goodbye paycheck, goodbye, TIAA craft fund, goodbye insurance, goodbye everything. And I thought, well, surely if I put all this flexible 60 plus hours in on my own business, I'll come out okay. Well, I ended up having to put my house up for sale. This is a house in a neighborhood in a town that I loved. I wasn't looking to leave, and moved 2 states away before my house was up for contract. During all of this, I pawned jewelry. Now, just think about yourself, like you would never think I'll ever do that. And I was like, not only that, but I pawned it so that I could pay for Facebook ads of all things.
Well, that's not fun. No, but I can relate. I get you. I've had to do things like that too. And Facebook ads is not very sexy, but it was a necessity at the time for your vision, right?
Right. And I can remember exactly the chair I was sitting in. I was on the phone and I was talking to my brother-in-law, about a personal loan. And I was in tears at the whole idea that I was even here. Like, how did I get here? And so I moved into my niece's basement bedroom with my dog, and upstairs are her husband, 3 kids, and their 2 dogs. This is not what you see for yourself at 49. Corner bedroom? No. Corner office? Yes. It was just totally, what is happening? How could I have gotten here? And I would drive by in my Lexus, nonetheless, which seemed so ironic. I would drive by homeless people, so many of them where I was at the moment, thinking, I can see how someone could get here now. How easily anyone. We can't judge on the outside whatever happened. So all of those were definitely growing pains, for greater empathy. But I could not look back, and I'm grateful that I was so naive that I never even considered it. I ran into someone the first day I moved to Boulder, which is where I was. I ran into a woman in the locker room. And ironically, naked. She was naked. I was in a swimming suit, but in the sauna. And she said, where are you from? You're not from here, are you? And I'm like, no, I hadn't even spoken to her. Like, how do you know? She said, well, most people don't wear swimsuits in here. And I'm like, okay. This is too much. But so it spilled out that I was in fitness. I was kind of starting over. It was a midlife crisis. And, she's like, wow. And like 5 years later, and I was moving, I ran into the same exact person. Almost, really? We were alone, not in the sauna and with clothes on, but I was washing my hands at the sink, and she came through and she said, you're still here. You made it. And I like, my jaw felt like it dropped. I didn't even know what to say. I had no words. She said, I remember meeting you. I wouldn't have wanted to be in your shoes. And with that, she left. And I was just like, I wanted to chase after her and say, I had no choice.
Yeah.
There was no other net. I wasn't married. There wasn't a second income. I was like, this was going to happen, period. End of sentence. At the time, it was a blessing I didn't see. It was awful. But had I not had that, there are ways that I've grown that I never would have. There are things I've done that I never would have. And, all of that, I think, is sometimes you have to see or know, trust things are happening for you, not to you, even though you can't see the end of the story.
Yeah. And I do think, we have this neurological reaction, this fear response when we start to let go of something. And it is really hard to stay on that vision track because this innate desire that you want to do something different, or maybe you want to leave a relationship, or you want to end a job, or whatever it may be. And as soon as you start to leave, that cortisol response is like, no, you can't go, and pulls you back, and people get stuck. And learning how to, I don't even want to use the words power through, because we don't power, we're vulnerable. I mean, all of us have stories that are just of hard times, but learning how to calm that fear response and really lead from our heart chakra, from love and from gratitude. I think we could all learn a little bit more from that, right? And it's free. It's free to change your thought into love and gratitude. I know you know this. If our frequencies, if you're living in fear and blame, you're down on 4 hertz or something like that.
Yes.
And if you're up in love and gratitude, you're in 600, 500, 600. And sometimes it's as simple as taking I don't have this, and turning it into, I'm so grateful I have, that takes you from down here to up here. That brings you to a space where you run into some naked woman in a sauna who you make an impression on, who years later you run into again because you're on the same frequency. And I'd actually wouldn't be surprised if you ran into her again in your lifetime, because I do think when we live in those frequencies, we run into these people, and then noticing that. I mean,
so true.
Because a lot of times we don't notice it. And I'm sure you see this with the people you work with, is that when you're in that, even if they're trying to lose weight, let's say they're coming to you for a fitness program and they're so hung up on the weight that they're missing a lot of opportunities to find so much joy. Like hikes. Oh my gosh, you have done some massive physical endeavors that I couldn't even imagine at this point doing.
Careful, I'll come over there. I'll get you. I know where to find you. We have. And, I love that somebody puts their hand up and says, I want to do that. But the whole joy of it is not that day. It's not that event or that hike. It's who you become along the way. It's immediately when you start training, you think of yourself differently, and it's a cumulative effect. It's not checking the box of 2 strength training sessions a week. I did the sets and I did that. And it's not about a selfie in front of the mirror. It's about taking the picture of the Grand Canyon behind you, or being at the bottom of it. And
which
saying,
you did.
Yeah.
And how did that feel after training for so long and then accomplishing that goal? Did you think, okay, now I have another goal, or were you able to just sit in that and just be?
It's all the things, I think. And for me as the coach, as the trainer, to watch somebody else finish it is as good or better. And now that I've done it and then gone back and repeated with other people, I can't ever get that virgin voyage back, right? I know what to expect. And it's almost sometimes when you're repeating it, you feel the heart more, because you're not just in naivety and expectation of what's coming. You're like, this is where my legs start to hurt. That's true. But as soon as you finish, it's like having a child is what I'd liken it to.
I was going to say childbirth for sure. You do it the first time, it's fine. The second time, you're like, what am I thinking?
Well, I didn't do it the second time, but I was just going to say, you just finished the worst pain of your life. And I am like, where's all the beauty and serenity? I mean, that is such bullshit. I'm like, I never experienced that. It was like I was dry heaving. I had back pain. I'm like, what? This is not for the picture they paint. But you're willing to do it immediately, all over again. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. There's no contest. But I think, watching women go through their own journey and knowing from start to end, they're going to wrestle with themselves 15 times. They're going to say, this was so stupid. Why did I do this? Who did I listen to? I don't like that coach. They're all of it. And then they're going to get to the other end and say, this was awesome. Like, what's next?
And I think that's a metaphor for every struggle that we go through, right?
Yeah.
But when you're doing it physically, you have to address it because you physically have a path in front of you that you've got to finish. But then in life, when things get hard, we back away or we blame people or we go another direction. And if we could just attack our lives in the same way that we would attack a training session like that, every failure is a training session. I don't like the word fail. I don't use it typically because I don't think we do fail. I think our only failure is doing nothing. That's a huge failure to me. If you're not moving forward and you're not uncomfortable, as you said in the beginning, we're not growing. So metaphorically, if you're moving forward and always taking steps forward and trying to deal with the obstacles, as mad as you get in the moment and as frustrated, you yell at the coach, you do whatever, you keep moving forward one step at a time. And I can imagine that a lot of the women, and probably men as well, that you work with that come in maybe over 50, maybe they've had health challenges, they're on medications, they've put on weight, they have a lot of things to overcome. It's not as simple as go to the gym for 30 minutes a day, which is what they're told, right? Just go walk for 30 minutes a day, you'll be fine. Or they're really focusing on weight as opposed to body composition, which is something that I see a lot with the women I work with in the 40s. They're very focused on the number. Right. And I have to keep saying, wait a minute, like you might be the same number or higher, but how much skeletal muscle versus fat do you have? And these are really important concepts as we get older. Yeah.
So important, right? I mean, muscle is your BFF, as soon as you're over 40, making sure you're not losing it, looking at it, at the very least, maintaining it. And for many of us, because we potentially, depending on how old you are, I love that we're seeing more young women in the weight room right now. Yes. So hopefully this won't continue, but many of us didn't lift weights when we were younger. So we can actually stand to gain lean muscle even after 40, after 50, and after 60. But without it, we'll die weaker, sicker, and younger.
Yeah.
None of which are good.
And you may be 10 pounds heavier. Like, right. I think there's that hard, I'm 20 pounds heavier than I was, if you can imagine. I know I'm a string being, but.
What? Yeah.
But when I was modeling, I'm 6 feet tall. I might have been 110 pounds, 115 pounds. And it was frowned upon to have muscular thighs. It was frowned upon to have thick arms. You were supposed to work out, but it wasn't so much about working out. It was about pushing your cardio with very little fuel. And it wasn't about nutrition. It was like caloric restriction. And can you fit into this size 0? And if you don't fit into it, you suck. You're out. You don't get the job. Wow. But I don't think I'm alone in that. Maybe back then when we didn't have social media and we didn't have all these external sources, I was maybe the 1% of poor little 12-year-olds that was exposed to this. But now we're all exposed to it because we're all looking at other people all the time and having other people tell us what we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to weigh. And it's such an archaic way to look at health, in my opinion. I weigh 20 pounds heavier. I also have far more energy, feel so much better. I feel I look significantly better, 20 pounds heavier than I was, even though I still catch myself trying to put on those pants and going, these don't fit like they did, or putting on a beautiful gown that used to just hang on me beautifully and flow. And now it's like I'm tucking my parts in and, trying to put stuff on, Yeah. But do you have anything to speak to that? Because I'm sure this is a huge objection, or it stops people from moving forward because they start to gain weight.
Yes. And, and I think to your point, we're still, we're the first generation that could, from day one forward now, have a smart scale in our bathroom so that we can track our lean muscle mass. A smart scale, not a dumb one that only tells you weight, because that's no feedback about is it muscle or is it fat. And long story short, I think we get smarter and wiser over 50 because we see our own mortality. We're either seeing it in our parents and our in-laws, or they're gone, and now we're it. And you start thinking, I want to be there. I want to be there for the grandchildren or the weddings and the graduations and all of the life moments. And how do I want to be there? And potentially we're motivated because we don't want to become what we've just seen with our own parents. We want to do it better. And that's granted. But I think the biggest obstacle for most people is what we're talking about, and it's mindset. It's the way they see themselves and the comfort they have with having always thought of themselves that way, even defaulting to, well, I always carry extra weight. I'm like, stop saying that.
Stop it.
Right? Because you're just driving it home. You're bringing it in. Say in the past, I used to carry extra weight. And if you even just start that, you're opening the door for what does my future look like? And the most important question, what do I want it to look like? Yeah.
And create it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I usually have my rubber band on my wrist to snap myself whenever I say that type of thing. I took it off today. But it's so true. Mindset is huge. It's in my patient database, people can only get so far until they choose to change their perspective. That's when people say, what's the secret? What's the secret to health? I really do feel that mindset is a good 85% of it, because if you don't have the right words, if you don't talk to yourself in a loving way, right? How is your body going to respond? Our head's connected to our body. All our cells communicate, right? So if we're communicating a certain message, our body is listening. And it sounds so, what's the word, Deborah? Like woo-woo, like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just, but it has been proven. It is proven science that when people start using mantras and they start using vision and they start really changing the way that they speak, they start to see success in every areas of their life. And when they start to see success in other areas of life, they start to see success in maybe a different area. When I think we tend to have it backwards when we're talking about weight. We're focusing on when I lose weight, my relationship will be better. When I lose weight, I'll go hike the Grand Canyon. When I lose weight, I'll go to Disneyland, right? It's like, but it's wrong. If you go do those things that you love,
yes.
Ironically, I don't know if you'll lose weight, but you'll gain muscle and lose fat, right?
Yeah.
But we have it backwards. But I think it's just the way we were raised. I don't know if you were raised in that way and that was a flip for you. For me, it's been a serious flip for me in the way I was raised.
I think definitely. And I think so many of the women that I work with come with the expectation that it's going to be hard. Change is going to be hard. Working out has to be hard. I've got a client and I've actually worked years with her, and I'm an exercise and sport psychology guru. Yeah. I've got that, but I went back to grad school to look at, from the shoulders up, we're not getting it. So that's where I was focusing. And, you peel back the onion and like you had some trauma in the lessons that you got. But a lot of people, it's been one comment from maybe a boyfriend, a husband, some pivotal mentor in their lives who said, well, you're just not very smart. Or, a professor said once to someone, you're not very smart. You have to work twice as hard as everybody else. And I'm like, fire that professor, but whatever. That's living with somebody who they're trying to make up for that in every way possible. And they keep saying it's got to be hard. And I think the question has to be, what if it's really easy? It's easier than we allow it to be. And it is that messaging that if we tell ourselves it's got to be hard, it will have to be hard, and you potentially won't get what you're really wanting. So letting go of fat, a lot of times it's ACEs, it's childhood trauma stored in tissues. It's not even potentially a blood sugar insulin resistant issue.
Right.
We have to uncover all of the parts.
Well, and if you are hanging on to that trauma and that's causing the blood sugar issue, that's when people come to me, they're saying, I'm doing the diet, I'm working out, I'm taking the supplements, nothing's changing. I'm like, okay, well then it's here. Right. And so anyone listening, really powerful point, because our mind changes our biochemistry. It changes our physiology. It changes the way we hold weight. It changes the way that our hormones interact, right? The power of words, how one person could say something, what they say has an impact on somebody else for their lifetime in their health. That's a powerful thing, right? Because we're saying to ourselves negative talk. We're probably saying negative talk to other people. Our words matter so very, very much. Look at the wisdom.
So much.
I told you, your wisdom. The dog even thinks so. The dog's like, the words matter. I'm telling you, my bloodhounds, they, like the Amazon guy, they must smell this guy from 3 miles away because he's not even on our driveway yet. And they're already at the window howling. And I'm looking out the window and I'm like, what's going on? And nothing. And then about 30 seconds later, in comes the Amazon guy. And they're like, see, I told you he was honest.
Oh my God.
That Amazon guy.
Yeah, right.
I think you were talking about hard. And one of the reasons when I danced as a kid, but I wasn't one that went to the gym because obviously in the modeling world, you want to be a twig. Like it's not about building muscle. It's about being as skinny as possible. But when my health did start to fail, because obviously it's going to, because you have no nutrition, you have no muscle mass, you're depressed. I was going through grief, whatever. And my adrenals were shot, stressed out. I was not taking care of myself in any way whatsoever. And I hit that rock bottom. I thought, okay, logically, I know I need to exercise and build muscle, but I don't like the gym. And I kept saying, I don't like the gym, which I shouldn't have said, but whatever, I said it. So I thought, what can I do that's fun? So I went back to dance class, and that's what got me back into dance. And once I started doing dance and I started to see how I felt and I started to find the joy, then all of a sudden I found myself in a Pilates studio. Doing Pilates. And then once I did Pilates for a while, now I go to the gym. I mean, it's a progression. It was all, as you say, hard, but you can find joy in movement too. You start with something you enjoy, and it's a progress, but it's harder to be sick. It's harder to not be able to pick up your grandchildren. It's harder to have to say no to events because you're at home in bed. My mom couldn't go to the bathroom by herself when she was dying of cancer. It was hard for her to get up and go to the bathroom. But we go to the bathroom every day. And we don't think, wow, I'm so happy that I can get up and walk to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's those little things throughout the day that keep you at that higher frequency we talked about, right?
Yeah. And we will, the closer we get, the less we will take that for granted. But, I think we also want to be thinking, I like the term, do something now that your 85-year-old self will thank you for.
Love it.
But it's a 2-for-1, because there's none of us, I think, that are not really wanting immediate gratification. And whether or not you're going to see the muscle tone or you're going to see the weight loss, you are going to trigger the chemical changes that make you feel better, give you more energy the rest of the day, help you problem solve, be more creative, work with the people that you work with, and be in a better mood in doing that. And all of that is eventually, even if you don't love exercise, I come to a rock and a hard place sometimes. I agree with you. I'd love everybody to dance if that's what they love and to get started, but it's a step by step. We've got muscle, we've got bone, and we need to pay attention to that. The older you are, the more urgent that is that we get started. But sometimes, like my sister, she's quite a bit older. She had a lifetime of starting and stopping and starting and stopping. And as the resident family fitness, guru, I learned real quick, I'm just going to stop because it's not helpful for them or for me that I'm continual nagging. So I waited for them to come to me. And, finally, she and her husband started ballroom dancing. And that led her to want to have better posture, be stronger, start Pilates, and just like you, it's like, okay, You got to find your thing. How will strength or agility benefit me so that I want to do those to get better at this and enjoy this more? Yeah.
Would you speak real quick, because I know people are asking, because we've been talking about exercise, but when you speak to diet, in a world of Ozempic and restriction and, the keto, the paleo, the vegan, like all the different diets that people can do, I know my thoughts on it. I'd like to know yours.
Wow, you did that just like a broad question there. So first of all, I think the biggest thing is make peace with it. I don't know that there's any one way to do it right. I think, though, back to the SMART scale and to that point of we've got objective and subjective ways both to collectively collect the data on you and to say, is what I'm doing now working? Is it giving me the results I want? Because then you open up, well, that's an opportunity then to look at how might I change so that I can get it? What's the problem? So when you're looking at your weight, your percent body fat, and your skeletal muscle mass, absolutely in pounds or kilograms, and you're looking at how's my, say on a 0 to 4 scale, how's my libido, how's my digestion, my elimination, how's my cognitive function, can I remember things, how's my sleep. All of those also either give you clues or they give you clues into what's working or not. You may not know how to interpret that into activity or habit changes, but then you're at a point where you can say, okay, at least I can think about this intelligently. We're all emotionally probably tied to some of the habits we have.
Sure.
Love that cup of coffee in the morning.
Me too.
Does not love me back. Damn it.
Oh, mine loves me still, but it might change. But I sit with my cup of coffee and I talk to my husband when he's getting ready for work, and then when he leaves, I sit and I listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza and I finish my coffee. So I make it a calm moment. If I can be outside, I do. Right? Yeah. I sit outside and do that. I think you can make coffee work for you, Debra. I think you can.
Well, what I find is it spikes my blood sugar. So maybe I'll try that. I'll try that one. But then there's compromises. You can say, okay, I really am committed to this. By the way, I'm committed to matcha or coffee. And so I go for a walk within 30 minutes of doing it to bring that blood sugar back down. Yeah. Because that's not going away. It's just not.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So I don't know that there's any one way. I've seen healthy people doing almost all kinds of things that I wouldn't have recommended. And yet you can't argue, just like, tell me your numbers. Tell me how we're doing, and then let's see, do we need to pivot? I find that for women, and I know this, hopefully this isn't a delicate subject, but I found that women who might have been vegan or vegetarian once in their life, sometimes at midlife, the high level of carbs and the inability to eat enough protein without getting full can be a problem.
Absolutely.
So supplementing with essential amino acids, and in some cases they've had to reintroduce some fish or easier to digest things if they were open to it, and other women have chosen, no, I'm committed to this. And so I'm forfeiting, what else might have happened. And, I'm not the judge. I'm just there to respect, lead, guide, and suggest. And then it's each of our individual choice.
Well, I think that's exactly how I feel too. We're all different bodies.
Yeah.
The same diet doesn't manifest the same in every single person. Mm-hmm. And I don't eat meat. Well, I shouldn't say, I do eat eggs occasionally. I'll have fish if I'm traveling. I actually am a very intuitive eater. Mm. And most of the time my body is craving a plant or lentils or chickpeas or vegan sources of protein. And I use a lot of vegan protein powders. But if I'm traveling and I don't have the luxury of people making beautiful vegan meals with lentils and nuts and seeds, and I'm having to eat, I refuse to eat an Impossible Burger. I just refuse it. I find that I'm living off tomatoes, cucumbers and lettuce. Then I'll say, okay, I'm going to go get an omelet because I need some protein in there, right? Because my body says I need it. But a lot of us lose that intuitiveness, but that has become more common as I've been over 40, right? And as I've been working out more, right? Because my protein component needs to go up.
Yep.
And it requires more supplementation, and it requires more mindful eating. Mm-hmm. I think it's easier for people when they're not vegan, right? Because you can always add in the protein easily. Mm-hmm. I just like to challenge myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm just an overachiever, and I like to try to figure it out.
And to your one comment, I think this is worth saying because I've heard this in a couple of podcasts very recently, and I think this is always said, but we forget the opposite is true. It's almost like there's two parts of this continuum or a bell curve, and we need to remember the bottom on one side is also the bottom on the other side. And that is often we're saying somebody who's very active needs more protein, but also what we're seeing with older adults, the less active they are, the more reduced muscle protein synthesis they have. Mm-hmm. So they need actually more protein. Like I looked at my mom when she was 90 and I was, 45. She needed more protein than I did. It's hard to get them to eat as much as they need because of other issues, but the need for it in order for them to get the adequate protein is higher. So don't think only if you're more active do you need it. And I think when we grew up, that was always it. Well, I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not exercising. So right. I don't need all that. So there's a reason why it's going to turn again, the less active we are.
Yeah, it's a great point. Great point. Well, I know we're on our time. I do want to ask you, what do you do for creativity to keep your mind happy?
I will tell you that I'm a little void there. And here's how I know. So I used to hand paint furniture. I actually was a graphic design major until I was a sophomore in college. So art has been a big part of my life, and it's not been a very big part of my life recently. And I recently saw a clip on Instagram of an artist who had her 3 children with blank canvases, and they were of 3 different ages, and she just let them go to see how long they would be engaged and what they would come up with. And I was like, we're going to do that at one of my retreats. And then I was like, I need to do that. Like, when was the last time I picked up pencils and just drew? And so
today.
Today. Okay.
It will happen today.
I'll text you later. Yeah.
I love to refurnish furniture. I have multiple pieces of furniture around my house that I found maybe at a vintage store or that I inherited, and I've sanded them down and I've chalk painted them and I've chained out things. I mean, a lot of my furniture was actually made by me. And someone asked me once, well, what would you have done if you wouldn't have gone into medicine? What are some of the things you would have done? And I said, oh my God, I would love to have like a shop where I built and refinished furniture and like sold it to people. Like that was, I seriously probably would be very fulfilled doing that, maybe someday. So
that is awesome.
I'm going to follow up with you and make sure that you drew something. I want you to send me a picture later of whatever you draw. And where can people find you? Because as I said, you are a wealth of wisdom. And may I also say, in the history of the people that I meet on a day-to-day basis, maybe the nicest and most giving, if not definitely one of the top. You just are a lovely soul. Where can they find your lovely soul?
Well, thank you so much. Flipping50.com. Those are all words spelled out. And on socials, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube most frequently, Flipping50 TV, as in television, Flipping50.
And I will put all of those in the show notes and collaborate here on the reels and stuff so that you guys can all follow Debra and continue to get a ton of knowledge and stay active. And I don't know about you, the two of us are not going to go out like an old shoe. We are going to be in our nice exercising, playing with the great grandkids, right? Riding Space Mountain and doing everything that we could imagine doing. So thank you so much for just taking time out of your busy day to chat with me.
Thank you. Always lovely to see you.
I'll see you soon.